You have one God, and that God is customer. The 12-page business plan that you just wrote off your own assumptions was an absolute fucking waste of time. However, the 10 objections you just got from your customers about why they're not buying, that's gold.
Jack Delosa is the founder of the Entourage, Australia's leading growth agency, responsible for over $6 billion in client results. A 5-time Young Rich lister, he's written bestsellers, filled stages, and mentored a generation of entrepreneurs.
Our identity is shaped by how we approach hard things. The more hard things you do, the less willpower each hard thing takes, therefore the easier it becomes. That's the power of identity. If it's anything under $5,000, and you should be trying to make contact within half an hour of the lead coming in. That's the process. Every hour that it takes you to contact the lead, your chance of conversion will decrease exponentially.
In this episode, Jack challenges the perfection myth, explaining why fast, imperfect action is the real path to success. He talks about how speed can shorten your sales cycle and opens up about the deeper side of entrepreneurship, fatherhood, self-trust, and what it really means to build a business that supports the life you actually want.
How can these people as entrepreneurs discover what their clients' deepest fears and buying motivators are?
The most important principle when it comes to sales and psychology and product or service delivery, customer retention, everything. People buy.
You know what I found very, very interesting? That 97.8% of you that listen and view this podcast haven't yet subscribed. Now, if you're looking for the one way that you can actually help us build this show into something that's going to be absolutely incredible and life-changing for you, the one thing you can do is to hit that subscribe button, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and money that we put into this podcast to make it what it is. And we've made it very clear that we never want to run ads or sponsors or anything like that on this show. So the only way that we can actually grow this channel is by subscribers. And I promise to you that if you hit that subscribe button, you help this show grow, then I'm going to continually keep bringing more, bigger, and better guests to teach you the skill set and the mindset that you wish you learned earlier in life. So please, it'll mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and do that right now. Now let's get into this episode.
Jack, so you've got your fingerprints on so many different types of businesses, industries. You've been invested in aviation, finance companies, massive education company, and you've helped so many businesses scale. For the people who are not too familiar with who Jack Delosa is, who are you and what got you into all of this?
Yeah, firstly, mate, thanks for having me, and good to see you. My story really starts when I was very young. My parents had a not-for-profit organization called Breaking the Cycle. And so I was 4 years of age at this point, and Breaking the Cycle would take youth at risk out of jail, out of abusive homes, off the streets, put them through a 3-month training and education program, and then facilitate them into employment. And so mum was the head teacher, dad was the managing director. And so that's literally the classroom that I grew up in. Mum would take me out of school and I'd be sitting in her classroom while she teaches personal development and psychology and employability skills. And so I'd see, young adults that were at risk is an understatement. These people were, in some instances, they'd come in looking half dead. And in some instances they were. And over a period of 3 months, you would see them grow into a version of themselves that was previously unimaginable to both them and us. And, I'm 4 or 5 years of age at this point. And so Breaking the Cycle taught me a lot. It taught me that it doesn't matter where you're at now. It doesn't matter how challenged a background you have. If you get around the right people, if you develop into the best version of yourself and you have the right support around you, doesn't matter where you come from, you can grow into someone and something, that represents a really amazing life. Breaking the Cycle was a not-for-profit organization. And so government pulled the funding, organization collapsed. And so that's where I get my commercial side from. I've always wanted to build businesses that make an impact and make a difference, but wanting and needing them to be hugely financially successful so that they're sustainable, so that they're scalable, so that we can attract the best talent from around the world, so that we can spend money on marketing budgets to amplify our message. And so I think that gives you a really good kind of insight into a very fundamental blueprint of who I am. I'm constantly balancing drive and presence. I'm highly commercial, and I am on a mission to make the world a better place. And there's also a spiritual and deeply psychological side to me as well, where, I believe that business should be a vehicle to make you and your life better, right? And so today I'm a very proud father to a almost 2-year-old Ariella. I have the most amazing wife in the world. Congratulations on your recent engagement as well, mate. That was awesome. And so my number one priority today is to be the best father and the best husband, and that requires energy and presence. And you can't be coming home stressed and tight and wound up and with your mind still at the office if you want to be present for your girls. And so for me today, I've been in business for 20 years now. As you said in the intro, I've invested in businesses from aviation to biotech to finance company that became a unicorn, which is $0 to $1 billion in valuation in under 10 years. I've sold 2 businesses over the last 5 years. I've built the largest growth agency in Australia. We help scale businesses from beginning to kind of 20 to 30 million range, and so all of that's amazing. But I now view it in collaboration and in context with I'm a father and a husband first and foremost. And so my daughter is about to turn 2. She's been to 8 countries. She's been on 60 flights, all while I'm running multiple 8-figure businesses. And so that's who I am today.
I love that. I heard because one thing. I was snowboarding the other day in Finland. Okay,
as you do.
And I remember I was going up the hill. I'm looking up the hill. And I thought to myself, I'm like, this is, I don't know if you snowboard much or.
I don't know.
For me, it's like, when you snowboard, it's just like, this is one of the happiest places ever. I'm like, this is
100%.
It's so great here.
It's like surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked myself, I'm like, why haven't I been snowboarding in like 6 years then?
Yes.
I'm like, why don't I snowboard? Why don't I do this every single year? And I started to really think.
Every quarter.
Like, yeah, I was like, well, what's going on here? And I was, just analyzing. When you take time off your business, you analyze everything. You're like
100%.
You go really
That's when you have the best ideas.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I was like, well, I spend so much time in the future as I do as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And what I found is the most depressed, sad people live in the past. The happiest people live in the present.
Yeah.
The most successful live in the future.
Yeah.
But not necessarily it's great. So how have you been able to balance that? Because you said when you come home, leave it at work. And sometimes it's easier said than done. Like I'll definitely still come home and I'm sitting there, I'm like ideas, thinking, and sometimes just can't really switch off. So how do you sort of find that balance of living in the future and predicting growth and future problems as that CEO and entrepreneur that's in our blood, and also being happy? Because if we live just in the future, we rob ourselves from happiness.
100%. That's something that I struggled with for many, many years, was how do I be both happy and a successful entrepreneur? Where I've arrived at today, having been in business for 20 years now, is I architect the future to such an extent that it enables me to come back and live and execute from the present every moment of every day. And so architecting the future means, where are we going? Why are we going there? What are the greatest constraints right now? What are the core initiatives we're working on over the next 90 days? Who do I need to lead? Who do I need to recruit? What needs to get done? The more clarity I have around where we're going and what we're building, the more I'm able to be sitting here with you right now. And I don't know what's on for the rest of my day. I don't know what I've got on tomorrow. I'll check that when I get to it. And so it's a balance between having an extreme degree of clarity around the future, having an extreme degree of belief around your ability to create it 100% of the time. So you're in absolute belief 100% of the time. That's what enables you to come back and be present in the now.
So just successful planning, trusting the plan.
Yeah. And I don't often use the word planning all that much, because you don't... Business is more about execution than it is planning. And so when I talk about planning, I'm not talking about a 20, 30-page business plan. I'm talking about, really, if I boil it down, I'm talking about 3 things. Number 1, direction. Where are we going and why? Number 2, constraints. What are the core roadblocks in this business right now? And therefore, number 3, what are the key initiatives we need to deploy against those constraints? That's the extent of my planning. It's interesting. I work with a lot of business owners every week, every month. And what I find is that human beings are really good at getting distracted with bullshit that just doesn't matter. And so I had one question the other day from a lady who, incredibly successful entrepreneur, multiple 7-figure business owner, texted a group that we're in and said, does anyone have a template for a SWOT analysis? And I said to her, it's a fucking SWOT analysis. What do you mean template? Open Google Slides. The first slide says strengths. The second slide says weaknesses. The third slide says opportunities. The fourth. What are we talking about a template for? On the same day, I got another question from another guy who said, does anybody know a good CRM and software management system for a clinic like ours? Our Google Drive is really disorganized. So he wanted better. It sounds he had the systems, but he wanted them better organized. And I said to him, I said, Nelson, I'm a big believer in simplicity. Simple scales, complex fails. And we're very good at overcomplicating things. And when we overcomplicate things, they get too complex, and it starts to get harder to see the signal through the noise. And so I said to him, you don't need a software management system. Organize the folders of your Google Drive. Create one Google Doc that is like a table of contents for all the systems that are categorized marketing, sales, product, whatever, that are hyperlinked to the actual doc. And so you organize your folders, create one central document that's your table of contents that hyperlinks to everything else that's there. Whenever someone creates a system, put it in the table of contents, hyperlink it. You don't need a software management system or a CRM, because then you'd spend the next 3 years trying to optimize and bang this big, expensive, clunky thing into shape, whereas that's not what he needed. And so all of that is to say, we are very good at distracting ourselves with things that are not important. Yeah. And so today, more than ever, great entrepreneurs have a extreme and relentless focus on the things that matter the most. And what I find, I'm sure you probably find it too with humans and business owners, is what we tend to do is we tend to go, I've got to do this hard thing, whether it's a SWOT analysis or organizing the Google Drive or building my sales process. Like, let's talk more impactful things. Building my sales process, deploying a marketing campaign, putting on a great event, preparing for an event, whatever it might be. I've got to do this thing. This is the most important thing. What we're very good at doing is procrastinating against that and finding something else that's difficult to do, not as difficult to do, so we can get busy doing the not so hard thing but still feel productive while we procrastinate. Business owners do this all the time. And so the older I've got and the more dialed in I've got with my focus and priorities, it's like all I focus on: direction, where are we going? Constraints, what are the roadblocks right now? I don't even try to imagine what the constraints are going to be 12 months from now. What are the fucking constraints right now in each function? And then what are the core initiatives that we need to deploy to unlock those constraints? And then once we've unlocked those constraints, we'll go, what are the constraints now? And then we'll unlock them.
Yeah, the next one.
And so it's a ruthless prioritization of attacking always the most important things.
It's funny you say that, because because everything we do, literally just ran an event yesterday talking all about this, because what I'm hearing is a lot of entrepreneurs get in their head, and it's the self-sabotaging things that will come up.
That's
so
exactly like, what it is.
So I'm going to delay on the thing that's most important that I know I need to do.
Yes.
And I'm going to do the thing that's not as important so I can justify why it feels like I'm still being productive and working on my business and growing, but I'm avoiding the thing that's actually going to push me forward because unconsciously it's scary. Or if I scale my business, then I'll be this. Or and it's all these limiting things come up and these conflicts. And
the longer you leave something, the harder it becomes to execute. And so everybody listening or watching to this podcast right now, know they have a project or even a task that's going to move their most important project for, that they've been thinking about and ruminating on for days, weeks, or months. And the longer that rumination period, the more we build it up in our head, the more we tell ourselves that it has to be perfect, the harder it becomes to just do the fucking thing. Yeah. And so my whole ethos these days is an extreme bias toward action. The phrase that I use with my team is speed to implementation.
Yeah.
Speed to implementation does not mean we just conduct actions in a way that is not directed. What it means is once we know the direction, once we make the decision, we're not setting up the next meeting for 3 weeks' time. It's I want the first 5 things done today. And so speed to implementation is an absolute superpower.
Yeah. That's what a while ago I was talking about, actually. I think I opened up one of our mastermind talks with that. It's like one of the most, I was thinking as we were talking about, like sometimes when I have a room full of people, it's the morning of, and I'm like, what should I teach today? And one of the things I was thinking, I was like,
skill of both of ours, apparently.
I was like, probably one of the best skills I think I have is shortening the process between idea and acting on that idea.
100%.
And the shorter we can make that, like on the other side of that is success, because it's either going to be, if I have an idea, let's just do that, let's implement today, let's trial it.
Yeah.
If I've got like 60% of the information, in fact, I got this
Yes.
from Barack Obama.
Yes.
They asked him, they said, how did you know that Osama bin Laden was actually going to be in that building?
Yeah.
And he goes, I didn't. And they're like, what do you mean? You sent your best SEAL team into there. You had to spend all this money on doing it, research for years. What do you mean you didn't know? And he goes, I was 60% sure. So we acted. 60% sure, leader of the free world, sends their best troops in. And he's like, he goes, we don't have time to get to 100% certainty.
Yeah.
I was quite confident, so we acted. So it does come into a mind thing. And I've literally got a quote here. So I want to hear what you think on this. I heard a quote, our biggest wins and our biggest failures will begin and end in our minds. It's not what others say about you that threatens your dreams. It's what you say about you that threatens your identity. So for someone drowning in a negative mind and they're trying to build their business and they're fighting the demons in their head, what's your advice to them to begin to deal with that better?
Identity is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so the question is, what narrative have you been using to describe yourself to yourself for the last 1, 2, or 3 years? Therein lies your current self-identity. And it's really made up of 3 things. Your beliefs, what do I believe about myself, the world, business, culture at large. Secondly, it's made up of values. What do I value and why? And thirdly, most importantly, it's made up of behavior. What do I see myself doing, particularly when no one's watching? Our identity is shaped by what we do. And so we have a culture that's obsessed with intention and rumination and meditation. Nothing wrong with that. I'm big on intention. I'm also a meditator, right? But I am doing it to move me to action quicker, better, and easier and more effectively than I would otherwise. I'm not ruminating for the sake of ruminating. I'm thinking deeply and I'm meditating or I'm journaling so that I can take awakened and directed action as quickly and as effectively as possible. And so the number one thing that shapes your identity is what you observe yourself doing. Most importantly, our identity is shaped by how we approach hard things. And so when the human mind comes up against something difficult, as you know better than anybody, the mind will look to retreat. It will look to pause because it's difficult. It's just how the human brain is wired. It's not wired. Your brain is not wired to make you successful or happy. Your brain is wired to keep you alive. And to keep you alive, it's wired over millennia to keep you alive, right? And so and to observe your environment for what are the major risks, right? And so when we come up against something that's hard, when we feel uncomfortable, our nature is to retreat. And so how you improve your identity is start leaning into the things that are most difficult in your life that you know you need to do. Because if you observe yourself doing them, if you observe yourself, exactly what you said before, minimize the time between idea and execution. As I was saying, maximize speed to implementation, right? If you observe yourself doing that and relentlessly leaning into the things that are most difficult on a consistent basis, then your identity becomes not just I'm somebody that's able to do hard things, but I'm able to do hard things with relative ease because it's who I am. When habits become your identity, you continue to do them while forgetting you're doing them. And that's the power of identity. And so you want to, we have a culture that's obsessed with what do other people think of me. I don't give a shit what other people think of you. I don't give a shit what other people think of me. all that matters is what I think of me. Because if I can train myself to see myself in a certain way, and I don't train myself that way by, doing anything other than demonstrating to myself that I'm somebody that leans into hard things. Final point on this. The more you have a bias toward action, and the more you develop the habit that you lean in quickly and easily to hard things, the less willpower it takes. I'll give you an example of that. Let's say you've got two different people and they both want to go to the gym that afternoon after work. And one person is sitting there and they're thinking, oh man, I really don't want to go to the gym. Let's say they're both tired. I really don't want to go to the gym, and they're thinking about it all day. And they're going, should I go to the gym? Should I not go to the gym? Oh, I could just not go today. I could probably do a session tomorrow or 2 sessions tomorrow and make it up.
And then negotiate with themselves.
They're negotiating with themselves and they're wrestling with themselves. And there's so much, as you know, psychological and emotional energy that we burn up in that process. The second person is also tired. But they are present at work. They get home. They go into their room without thinking about it. They change their pants for their gym shorts and they put on their gym shoes. Once you do that, you're at the gym. And so they both end up taking the same action of going to the gym. It's just that person A burned through a hell of a lot of willpower to get there. And so it's counterintuitive that the more hard things you do, the less willpower each hard thing takes, therefore the easier it becomes. That's the power of identity.
I've watched this in myself even more in the last 18 months since I started skydiving.
Right.
And so I have a philosophy. It's like, if you're an entrepreneur, like, you should go and get a skydive license because it's the best personal development I think I've ever done. Because it's like, I thought I was all good with like facing fears. And then when they teach you for 8 hours all the theory of how to not die skydiving, then the next day 3 hours in an airplane, far out.
That'll get you present.
It challenges everything you thought you were. And
how many jumps have you done now?
30 something.
Wow.
33 or something.
Wow.
But the biggest thing I got from it was, I was the next day when I was about to jump, all the fear was coming out, as you do. And I was trying to analyze, what is this fear? Is this actual fear, which is governed fear? You jump out of an airplane, most people are afraid of that. Or is it something else? And the fear it wasn't actually fear, it was uncertainty and I said to myself, okay, well, what if you just don't open the parachute? I'm like, why the fuck would I not open the parachute? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's a possibility. I'm like, that's a fact. It's I could get there and freeze. I've never free-felled before from like that. I don't know what's going to happen. So the thing actually was a lack of self-trust. I was like,
beautiful.
Interesting. So I said, good. Well, of course you don't have self-trust on that one yet because you've never done that. It's probably the hardest thing mentally I've done. So I said, why don't you just take a step of courage, do it, and let's see what happens. Trust yourself. You do the things that you just learned how to do. So, all right, let's do it. I did it. The first time I did it, came on the ground, I was like, holy shit. Hardest thing I mentally ever did. And every time I do it now, not only it gets easier and easier, but it's scary how calm my nervous system is now when I land.
Yeah.
I land, I'm like, yawning. People are like, how's the jump? So, good.
Yeah.
Like I'm
do with
calm.
a coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm calm now under chaos. And I can't tell you how much that's literally helped me in business and all this stuff. Because if I can calm my body while throwing myself out of an airplane 15,000 feet, falling 1,000 feet every 5 seconds, I got 65 seconds roughly of decision-making time up there. A minute.
Yeah.
And then if you pull your parachute and there's a malfunction, you've got about 10 to 15 seconds maximum to figure shit out under a tremendous amount of stress then. So I'm like, if I can do it there, man, building a business is easy.
It's a great metaphor for business.
Yeah. So it is the stacking effect of doing things that are hard. And
100%.
You find things that are a little bit, people ask, they're like, were you nervous proposing? I said, man, compared to jumping out of an airplane, it was fucking very easy actually. It was cold.
As is skydiving, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about the emotional energy that you burn through for that first jump and that second jump and that third jump relative to your 28th, 29th and 30th, it's like night and day, right? Whereas to come back to the example we were talking about before, let's just say you decided you wanted to become a skydiver and then sat around for 6 months thinking about it. how much willpower would we and fear and anxiety? You'd wake up at 2 or 3. You at the beginning you'd be relatively fine. After month 2 or 3, you'd be waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. thinking about it. This is how most people approach life and business. Is there's so much rumination that it's actually causing more emotional distress than the uncomfortability of just do the fucking thing, right? I'll give you another example. I'm placing a real emphasis on health at the moment. And I start with a cleanse that one of my bodybuilder buddies kind of gives me. And it's essentially 6 days where you kind of don't eat much at all. You're on like 400 calories a day and you're training at the gym. It is excruciatingly horrible. And even starting that cleanse, it was one morning, 4th of January, I woke up, I was brushing my teeth, I decided to do it, I started that morning. Like the decision was that quick. But on about day 5, you're feeling horrible, right? And so I'm at our office and I'm, in meetings with the team and doing presentations and all of that kind of stuff. And I was looking for a exceptional bodybuilder in Sydney that I could engage as a personal trainer and nutritionist, because the previous bodybuilder I use is based over in Canada. And I had this world champion Mr. Universe bodybuilder reach out to me. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, Jack, I can catch up with you at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, fuck, I'm on day 5 of this cleanse. I feel like I'm a shell of myself. He's going to want to train. And, I've probably eaten 800 calories in the last 3 days type thing. And so I'm not going to make a good first impression. I do want to build a relationship with this person because I want to work with them over a number of years. If we train, I'm going to be at 20, maybe 30%. And I immediately, before I gave myself a chance to think about it, texted back, done, I'll see you at 4. And I'm now, I've been working with him for the last couple of weeks, and it's probably the best decision I've ever made come to my health and fitness, because he's just so knowledgeable. He's now, in his mid-50s, and so he was actively competing in bodybuilding for 40 years. And so, there were so many reasons to say, no, let's meet in 2 days' time, like when I was off the cleanse, right? Or even let's meet tomorrow morning, because I might feel a bit fresher when I won't have had meetings all day and be as exhausted as I am. And the principle here is there will always be reasons not to do things. And your brain will always try to talk you out of doing the most constructive thing right now, because the constructive thing right now is the difficult thing, and it's the thing that you don't want to do. And so building this speed implementation muscle, go see the fucking bodybuilder, jump out of the plane 30 times, jump up on stage, do the event, deploy the marketing campaign, shoot your shot with the girl or the guy that you like, whatever it might be, but do it now, because when you get in the habit of doing it, you'll churn through so much less emotional energy than those that are sitting around procrastinating their whole life.
All right, so I want to pivot the conversation to like more business angle, practical things for people listening. And I know one of the things you're huge on is sales, like big part of everything you guys are teaching, sales being like the lifeblood. And could sound like a dumb question, but I want to sort of segue into this. But what makes sales the top priority for someone really starting in business and scaling up?
Sales is the most important area of business because it's the function that brings in the money. Full stop. Everything else is a distraction. Everything else is a distraction.
So making a logo for your company is
distraction.
Not more.
I was having this conversation with my wife yesterday. Distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of people have come in late starting business. Okay, so I've got my logo in order.
Right.
Got my website ready.
Right.
We've even got our printed T-shirts. How many sales you made? None yet, but we're getting ready.
Yeah. The website will be ready in 3 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Right. It is procrastination dressed up as branding. It's all bullshit. One of the things that if you go to Silicon Valley and meet with SaaS entrepreneurs, software entrepreneurs, one of the things they're really good at looking at is at the point of transaction, what specifically is the customer buying? And so the conversation I was having yesterday with a group of friends was, We had one person that was doing exactly everything you just said. I'm getting the branding, I'm getting the website, I'm getting the this, I'm getting the that. And I said, the best models in your space do content, sell by chat, into a Google Doc, get people started, done. You could have all of that done this afternoon. In fact, I can give it all to you. And I'm not saying don't build the website. I'm not saying don't have a logo. I am saying it's not an excuse to procrastinate. When I started the Entourage in 2010, I didn't have the name for the first 6 months. I would be doing events. I'd be talking about, and we would refer to the business as No Name. And so I would say, so team, the vision for No Name, what we're really going to do is, right? I just refer to it as No Name. I literally started the fucking business without a name, much less a logo. You can't have a website when you don't have a name or a logo, right? And so I started with nothing. I started it by showing up, doing what the business needed me to do and making sales. And so having a logo is useful. Having a website is useful. Having good branding is a nice to have additional thing. None of that, dude, I see this all the time, particularly for people starting out, is they busy themselves for 3, 6, 12 months building all of the other stuff because deep down they know what they're avoiding. The fear for humans in that specific scenario is if and when I take this to market, if nobody buys it, I will feel like a failure. And so I want to prolong that possibility for as long as possible. And in so doing, all they're doing is maximizing the chance that they will fail. Because if you can go to market, I'm not talking about next week, I'm talking about today. Put up a story on your Instagram. Anybody that expresses interest, have a chat with them in your DMs. If you need to get on the phone, get on the phone, but sell something. The person that does that, over a month or two, they're getting the only feedback that matters, which is consumer insight. And so they've made 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 iterations on the product or the service according to the direct feedback they've got from their customer, the direct feedback from the market. And so by the time the other person's ruminating and thinking about their logo in month 4, this person's onto version 7 with an optimized product or service that they've proven people want. And guess what? They're now making money as well.
It's funny, like our stories are so similar.
They are, yeah, we're very similar.
So when I started doing all our training and our events and stuff, people were like, "Oh, what are you calling the company?" I'm like, "It's just Morgan." Like it's, I'm like, "What are you?" When I'm a personal brand, and I'm like, "But I'm not building Morgan Nelson." But and I remember setting it all up with the account. They're like, "Well, we're gonna call the company something." I'm just fucking call it. It was literally called Morgan T. Nelson Pty Ltd.
Yeah,
and then. The last couple of years, I've hated it because I'm like, I don't like it because it goes on invoices and people are like, oh, I was like, we're not building Morgan. We're building something else. And then people are like, you're building Dream Out Loud. It's not fucking Dream Out Loud either. That's just the thing I say. It's just like, it's the name of the podcast. It's our phrase. It's like 10X, right?
Yeah.
And literally about 2 months ago, we just changed the name of the company. 3 years in now to DOL Group, Dream Out Loud Group. And I'm like, sounds good. That's what we're fucking doing because we're a group and I have a lot of things. We just build a studio. We have health stuff. We do media company. Like we do so many other things under the label.
Yes.
And I'm like, sounds good. I'm like, I'm not thinking about it for another second. Let's just keep back to it. Like we're not building this thing to, and it's just people waste time with a lot of useless things.
Yes.
And but there was so just ready, fire, aim.
Yes.
For so many things. And I remember actually our first event we ran. I did a 3-day event, and typically this event model, right? You run events, they've got to go somewhere else, right? I was on day 3 and I thought, fuck, there's nothing we're selling here.
That's exactly what I did.
And then I go, what should I do? So I just thought, I actually asked everyone, I said, I got 2 things in mind. Do you want to spend another event together? Or do you want me to coach you for the next 8 weeks? People are like, oh yeah, 8 weeks. I said, good. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's 8 weeks. It's this much. Who's in? And half the room sign up. I was like, fuck. Well, now I'm like, it starts in 2 weeks. Now I got to figure out what the fuck am I going to coach him for 8 weeks?
Exactly. And that's the work that you should be busy doing.
Yeah.
I've just sold it. How the fuck am I going to deliver it? That's the work every entrepreneur should be doing in the beginning. Dude, I did the exact same thing. We used to run big unconventions. Back then, it was probably like 300 to 500 people. And then we'd run a 2-day event. And we're on to like our second or third 2-day event, and I would run them with my best friend in the world, Andrew Morello. He'd run The Apprentice. He was working with Mark Boris at Yellow Brick Road, and he's now with us at the Entourage full time. And someone else was presenting, and him and I were at the back of the room. He's like, "Bro, I've been coaching these people, and this is what I do." And I go, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." It's like 3/4 of the way through day 2. And I'm like, "That sounds really, should we do that now?" He's like, "Yeah, I think we should do that now." And so we're at the back of the room, piece of paper, couple of pens. What should we do? 12-month program, I get up, I pitch it because I know sales. Half the room buy it. That was really the beginning of what the Entourage is today. It was that unscientific in the beginning. Now, as you grow to a $50 million brand and you've got a team of 60 people and you're operating in international markets, when you get to that sort of doing over 8 figures, you need to become more strategic. You need to become more calculated. You actually do need to think things through, because every decision I make, I need 60. It's a bigger ship. I need 60 people to shift direction. And when you're doing multiple 8 figures, if you're shifting direction every 3 months, everyone just gets whiplash, and you're not fully utilizing the resources and the people and the brand that you have. And so you do need to become more strategic when you get to 8 figures. You need to become slightly more strategic when you get to 7 figures. But from 0 to 7, it is a 100% ruthless bias towards action.
Yeah. You going to say something?
I was going to say, the way I used to view this when I was sort of starting businesses from nothing is I was like, between where I am and where I want to be, there's 1,000 lessons. It's not between where I am and where I want to be is 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. That's the incorrect way of thinking about it. Between where I am and where I want to be is 1,000 lessons. Now, is it 80 lessons? Is it 2,000 lessons? Doesn't matter. But between where I am and where I want to be is 1,000 lessons. And I can learn those 1,000 lessons extremely quickly with contact to market, or I can learn them extremely slowly by ruminating and procrastinating and thinking about it and churning through all the emotional, burning up all the emotional energy. And so all that matters in the beginning and in the middle and towards the end is market. All that matters, you have one God, and that God is customer. And so everything that is not customer insight, everything that doesn't come from the 12-page business plan that you just wrote off your own assumptions was an absolute fucking waste of time. However, the 10 objections you just got from your customers about why they're not buying, or the 3 reasons you just got from the client that you lost as to why they're leaving, that's gold. That's the best. But we're taught that the objection is rejection, and that when a client leaves, feel rejected, and there's all this emotional energy tied up in it. Whereas just look at it as consumer data. I just learned 3 ways to improve my product. I just learned 6 ways to improve my sales process. I just learned 6 ways to prevent those objections from ever coming up again. And so it's all a bias toward action.
So when it comes to sales, and actually, so for the people going out there and selling their first products and really scaling their business to 7 figures, what I see a lot of people getting wrong is, especially because my first business I started was in network marketing. And so often network marketers go, tell me about your business, your product. And they go, well, here's the 20 scientific reports.
Dude.
Here's all the information. Here's all the pros, the cons of our product and how good we are, right? and you know, like I guarantee there's probably no one listening to this or watching this that hasn't heard the saying, people buy with emotion, justify with logic. I think most people know that. But then when it comes to getting to sales, they're like, well, let me tell you about why we're so good, because we do all this. But we actually know that it comes from a much deeper level of really understanding why the customer's buying. What are their deep desires? What are their deep fears? What are their deep problems? So I want to sort of unpack that. How do they go about really uncovering their customers' deepest fears, their desires, their deep motivators? Because people are really buying to avoid some sort of discomfort they already have, whether they're aware of that or not. Us as salespeople need to help unpack that. So how can these people as entrepreneurs discover what their clients' deepest fears and buying motivators are?
There's so much there, and I'm going to say I'm going to reiterate one of the things that you just said, because it's the most important principle when it comes to sales and psychology and product or service delivery, customer retention, everything. People buy emotionally and justify logically. Everybody watching this is probably familiar with left and right brain thinking, right? Left brain is known for logic, right brain is known for creativity and emotion. The Entourage, we call the left side of the brain red brain. Why? What do you do when you get to a red light? What color is a stop sign? Red. When we anchor our prospect in the left side of their brain, the logical red brain, it causes them to stop, pause, and look for reasons to retreat. And the problem is that red brain becomes our comfort zone, because when you talk about your product, your service, its features, its deliverability, the time it takes to install or to do, the contract, the price, these are all red brain conversations. And so red brain becomes the comfort zone of the salesperson. Red brain becomes the comfort zone of the business owner, because that's what we've obsessed about for as long as we've owned the business. Those are the things that we've obsessed about. And so red brain becomes our comfort zone, and we literally red brain ourselves out of sales. The right side of the brain we call green brain, right? What do you do when you get to a green line? You floor it, right? And so many of us have probably had the experience of you've gotten to an intersection, you've driven through the intersection, you're now on the other side of it, and you thought to yourself, Jesus Christ, was that light green? Because it was so subconscious for us to proceed that we didn't even consciously notice the color of the light. Or you might be coming up to a green light and a cyclist or a pedestrian starts to encroach out onto the road and it startles you. Why does it startle us? Because we weren't looking for danger. We were just ready to go. And so we call this green brain, because when your prospects are anchored in their green brain, they will make better, faster decisions. You won't get, I need to think about it. I need to talk to someone about it. I want to shop it around. You'll get, you had me at hello, let's go. And the key is, in order to make decisions, we need both sides of the brain activated. And so red brain's not the enemy. It's just that right now it comprises far too much of your sales process. It needs to be 10 or 20%, not 80%, right? And so when we look at green brain messaging, when we look at green braining your sales process, the real question is, what are the things that are driving behavior? What are the core things that shape human decision making? And there's really two forces to green brain. The first is what I call away from motivators, which is the desire to move away from pain. And the second is toward motivators, the desire to move towards pleasure. And so I call these buying motivators. What is your customer looking to move away from? What undesired reality, what pain, what uncomfortability are they looking to move away from? And the toward motivator is, what are they looking to move towards? Here's the thing. Nobody gives a shit about your product or service. I only care about it to the extent that it helps me move away from pain and towards pleasure. And so the conversation isn't about your product or service. The conversation is about, how is your product or service a conduit from the reality that I don't want to the reality that I do want? The best way to understand what they are is speak to your fucking prospects. Speak to your customers. The best understanding of buying motivators, the best copy, the best phrases, the best words to use, the best way to articulate your product or service will come from your prospect. And you can ask them, whether it's during the sales process or after they buy, what were the problems that you were looking to solve when you bought from us? Ah, man, I'm glad you asked. I really had a challenge with this, and this. And what was the exact moment that you knew this was the right solution for you? It was when you actually said A, B, and C. Because I've always said to my wife, X, Y, and Z. And I want that X, Y, and Z. I want, how do they, not how do I think about it, not how does my business think about it, not how does the business plan think we're going to think about it. I want to know the exact words that they use to describe their pain. The exact words they use to describe the outcomes and the goals that they're seeking. And then I will build our marketing, our sales, even our delivery and retention system around the words that they use.
I love it. Yeah. So I was literally spending all day yesterday speaking, because everything I talk about is discovering our own, the things that we move towards and away from. And it's like we will do anything to move towards pain, anything to, it's about 11 times more motivating to move away from pain. Yeah. And that's what everyone's working on to ultimately do, whether they're aware of that or not.
Yeah.
And then, so they're buying with emotion, justifying with logic. I know a big justification of the logic will come in of, okay, does this make sense? Is the offer good? Is the pricing good? So when it comes to offers, since Alex Hormozi wrote his book, it's becomes so glad he wrote that book actually, because it's like I was always trying to like you know, I don't know what I called it before the word offer came. You know, I was just like, you know what I mean? I was like, very good book, just to like specifically here's the formula for it. But what do you think? Is it better for us to have a premium offer that sits above, like, well, we stand out, ours is premium, it's more than the rest, and we're in our own category? Or is it better for us to go out there and try to actually compete and work against other people in the market and try to beat our competition on pricing?
It depends what business you're in, depends what industry you're in. If it's a consulting, training, coaching business, you definitely should not start out competing on price. You should compete on offer by making your offer so different that there aren't any clear competitors. And then to come back to your question in a more pointed way, the best models today will start with an offer that gets a good degree of volume, right? And so let's say it's a $1,000 a month type offer, right? And you're able to get 50, 100, couple hundred people into this online community, online group coaching type of an offer. I would start there, because once you've got your first 100, 200 people there, then your premium offers, you've got a very warm prospect base to market to. In fact, they'll come to you. They'll say, this is amazing. Morgan, can I work with you directly? Or you'll have them in a WhatsApp group and you'll send out a message, hey team, I'm doing a VIP day in 2 months. Click here to apply now. And so, but I want to be really clear. That's not to suggest that somebody should start with a low price offering. I want you to start with an offer where you believe you can get decent volume, and then you're building that kind of mid-tier customer. If you view like your Instagram following as like your top of funnel, your middle of funnel should be that mid kind of offer where you're competing not on price but with a different offer. And they will be 80% of the prospects that actually go through to your premium offer.
Yeah. And have you found it, because I know one of the things you also sort of talk about with people is condensing the sales cycle.
Yeah.
So we can go out there and make sales.
Yeah.
And especially in different types of businesses, you might put in a sale, collect an invoice is paid down the line. And I know actually one of the things that we had Christina Carlson, founder of Kiki K.
She's a legend.
Yeah, super cool. And she said one of the biggest struggles that they were having was, you know, not so much the sales, but it was more so like their inventory. So they would have a really, like in retail, massive great period, make all this cash, then had to use that cash to sort of keep the company going through the lower periods. And it's just like this, as the business grows, it's almost like the bigger it gets, sometimes it can become more challenging of just managing this cash flow.
100%.
So we do sales, then maybe the cash doesn't actually come back in too long down the line. So explain to us sales cycle and how can we actually condense this space between doing the deal and having the cash hit our bank so our business isn't dying in the meantime while we actually have to deliver on something still.
Yeah. When I talk about reducing time to sale, what I'm really talking about is minimizing lead to sale. Assuming that at the point of sale, you set the offer up such that you're getting a large part of the cash that liquidates the funnel, liquidates the acquisition, and funds the business, even if there is ongoing revenue on the back end, right? And so if we talk lead to sale, the vast majority of businesses do not have a systemized way of generating sales. And because we live in a culture where nobody likes to be sold to, that translates to a aversion to what we would call sales. I don't want to come across salesy. I don't want to come across pushy. And so counterintuitively, the more trained you become in sales and communication, the less salesy you will come across. Sales is only awkward for you because you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you don't have a system that you're leading people through. And so when we develop a sales system and we develop our communication and sales skills as a business owner or a salesperson, what that does is it gives the consumer more certainty faster. We live in a world where nobody wants to be sold to, but your prospects are begging to be led. In a world of uncertainty, people crave certainty. And if you're telling yourself, I'm not good at sales, I don't want to come across salesy, and you've never trained yourself in effective communication, you are not giving your prospect certainty. You're hesitating. And who picks up on the hesitation? The prospect. And so there's no leadership there. Yes, your prospects don't want to be sold to. They are begging to be led.
But they love to buy.
They love to buy. We don't want to. We don't want to be sold a car. We don't want to. We want to buy a car. We want to own a car. We don't want to be sold a car. Yeah. We want to buy a home. We want to own a home. We don't want to be sold a home. And so, while they don't want to be sold to, they do want to be led. While they don't want you to sell at them, they do want to buy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in your ecosystem. And so we want to do two things. You want to bottle the best possible way that you move somebody from curious to committed, from lead to sale, from
speeding that process up.
By bottling best practice.
And how do we go about that? And what is the best practice of that? Like, is there a time frame? Or is it just doing your best there, trying to move them down the line as fast as possible?
The time frame will depend on the industry and the business. And so if it's anything under $5,000, your time to sale should be half an hour from when you make contact. And you should be trying to make contact within half an hour of the lead coming in.
Wow.
If it's 5,000 to 40,000, your time to sale might be 7 days. If it's 40,000 to, let's say, 100,000, it might be 14 to 28 days. And if it's a couple of 100,000 or a few 100,000 or a few million, like, you're selling commercial property or you're a technology, you build technology for large corporates, then your lead to sale is going to be months. But with a sales system, it'll be 3 months. Without a sales system, it'll be 18 months. And I'm not exaggerating by that. When members start with the Entourage and they're, let's say big tech consulting and development firm that sell into corporates, their lead to sale is 18 months because they have no system for how do I elicit the needs of the prospect and all of the stakeholders. How do I then develop a strategy that resonates with them? How do I then present that in a way that maximizes perceived value? How do I retain control of the process in order to get them started and get the deal signed? And then what's the very first thing I do to kick off the project in a way that makes the first wins happen as quickly as possible so that we retain them because they've got that instant gratification. And so if you're a large business selling into corporates and you're not doing that, like, somebody will be watching, I guarantee you, somebody will be watching this right now, listening to this right now, who will be in that boat if they have a business like that. It's like, it takes me 18 months because I sell to Telstra. All right, I can show you how to do it in 3. If you're a coach or a consulting business or a training business or any type of service-based business, let's say you're selling something 5 to 40K, that's the process. Firstly, it's lead to contact. So after the lead comes in, every hour that it takes you to contact the lead, your chance of conversion will decrease exponentially.
Every hour.
Wow. And so this is the other thing, man, is, my team, they did this without me knowing. They called around and kind of mystery shopped a bunch of people that, would kind of loosely be defined as competitors. And what they found is that our competitors were taking about 10 days to reach out to them, let alone get them on the phone to actually have a conversation. With us at the Entourage, that happens in the first outreach happens within half an hour, usually quicker. We'll be in front of someone within 24 hours. And so how do you compete with that? Like, you can't. Particularly if you're in an industry where people are actively looking at 2 to 3 different solutions. By the time we got them started 4 days ago, our competitor is reaching out to them.
I'll give you a perfect example. We looked into, like, in one of my other companies, we have a media agency as well. And I think when we started that, because I sort of just says like more the investment, it's the sort of side of that. I'm not really in the business on that one. Yeah. So I started to flick some recommendations. I'm like, you guys should probably jump into some type of, like, business community, some growth thing to sort of learn some of these stuff. And I go, this is about 2.5 years ago. And I think it was actually even before I knew you, actually. Otherwise, maybe we'd hit out the Entourage. And I was like, you guys check out these group. I think they were pretty good. And we sussed it out. Spoke to somebody on a phone call, and we're like, shoot everything over to us so we can like check all out. Let me show the other guys. Right. Nothing came through. Actually, It came through it was about 2 weeks later.
Yes.
If you know what happened within 2 weeks, my other business partner went and jumped into some marketing specific kind of group in America because they were just faster to close the deal. And it was literally like our team was sitting there going, we want help with this specific thing, like marketing and sort of bringing this idea for a funnel and yada, yada. And they literally would have went with this other group, but they took too long. And then by the time they came back, we're like, actually, we're good now.
Dude.
But it also comes down to resources, because I would probably be one of these people. If someone has reached out to us now, I have 300 unread DMs in my inbox. It's also like the bandwidth of like growing.
With the 300 DMs, if we have a sales system that converts them predictably, you'll bring on the people to address them quicker because you'll have proven return.
So I was going to ask that.
Let's come back to everything you just said, because it's absolutely spot on. And I sigh because I spend my life trying to get business owners and human beings to do the basics. We're talking lead to sale. How do we reduce the time? It isn't anything fancy. It isn't anything convoluted. What grows businesses are not exciting, novel, or interesting. It's just the basic fucking work that needs doing. Lead to sale. How quickly is that first outreach? How quickly is that first contact? When you make that contact, what do you do and ask in the first 10 seconds? Then in the first 10 minutes, how do you make them feel supported and heard and cared for while building the perceived value of your solution and moving them on to a larger session so that you can have a deeper dive and actually get them started on whatever you're doing? How do you then schedule that in? So you don't say, when's good for you? You say, we can do this Thursday, 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. Other than that, I'm really busy. Which would you prefer? And then in that deep dive session, what are the questions that you ask? How do you explore their needs? How do you elicit and get them to say they're away from motivators and their pain and they're toward motivators and the outcomes that they want? How do you then transition to getting them started, and how do you present your solution? When they give you an objection, how do you prevent it from coming up before it does come up? And once they do give you an objection, how do you overcome it and get back to the close? All of these most of the people watching this podcast are probably familiar intellectually with everything I just said. The businesses that scale are not doing anything fancy. They're doing the basics well at scale. That's what makes them great. And so it comes back to the first conversation we're having around simplicity and bias toward action. Most people know what to do to make them successful. They're busy distracting themselves, going out and trying to find what's the fancy, what's the convoluted, what's the shiny thing that's going to keep me intellectually busy, as opposed to just doing the fundamentals that are going to get the result.
So when should we bring in that help? Like at what point in the business, let's say someone's starting from $10,000 a month right now and they're actually scaling. At what point should somebody focus on sort of bringing in extra help to help them sort of grow their sales, their marketing, their team? Can you hire too early, hire too late? Is there a formula here? Or
I build team quickly because my whole approach to business is create a great product that people genuinely will crawl over glass to get and to stay in. Then once the product is sound and it's being delivered reliably and consistently at a high quality, then place all of your emphasis on marketing and sales, right? All growth is sales and marketing led. Most business owners spend 90% of their time in product development and delivery. And if you spend most of your time in product delivery, service delivery, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so generally speaking, that's the first aspect of business we need to backfill you in, because I want to free you up to spend most of your time in marketing and sales. How do we know when to build team? You ask yourself, what is the biggest challenge in this business right now that when solved would make the biggest difference? And do I have the cash flow to employ somebody to do that for me? Because even if they're 60% as good as you, you're the CEO. You're across marketing, sales, product, ops, finance, and people. You're across the whole breadth of the business. So even if they're only 60% as good as you, and you can find people that are 80%, 90%, when you start hiring senior leaders, you can actually find people that are 200% better than you, right? But let's say they're 60% as good as you, just by virtue of them being able to spend 100% of their time in that aspect of the business probably means that their output and their results are going to be superior to yours just by virtue of focus. And so most people hire way too late because they're trying to preserve margin.
Yeah. And it's so scary. Every time I've hired a new role, I'm like, oh, and that's why I'm like, fucking hire them.
Let me tell you the number one psychological block that I think causes that. We look at the salary and the salary is 80 grand, 100 grand, 150 grand. And we go, whoa, that's a large number. I don't think of it like that. Let's say the salary is 120 grand. I'm not spending $120,000. I'm spending 10 grand this month. Next month, I'm spending another 10 grand. Well, the 120 grand is going to happen over the next 12 months. You're not spending that 120 grand when you hire the person. And so if I hire a salesperson or a marketing manager or a sales manager, I want to have that person effective in 2 months, exceptional in 3. And so by that point, can I get the person to a point where they're generating more than $10,000 a month? Yeah. And if I've got a sales system and I'm developing and growing myself as an entrepreneur, then the answer is usually unquestionably so, provided I hire the right person. And so you're not spending 120K, you're spending 10K a month. Let's say you've got 3 months down the track, you determined that either you didn't have your shit together or they're not the right person. You've wasted 30 grand. You haven't wasted 120. Right? And maybe you can put the person in a different role where they actually do make money. And so the reason I build team quickly is my job is to build something people love, spend as much time driving the marketing and sales of the organization, and then building a team that can support a great business. Because I can, people say revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Revenue isn't necessarily vanity if you view it with the strategic eye. And let me explain what I mean by that. In the beginning, I'm not looking to maximize margin necessarily. Why? Because if I'm building revenue, and let's say I'm doing $1 million a year. If I look to maximize margin at that point in the game, I'm limiting the growth potential of the business. And so I might be able to get it to a point where it's 40% margin, 50% margin. Cool, I'm making $500 grand a year, whatever it might be. But if I actually spend some of that on building out a team of A players, if I spend some of that on profitable marketing that I know is going to convert into significantly more revenue, well, then I'm going to have less margin in the short term, but I'm going to build a great business that can operate without me being involved in the day-to-day, that is eventually going to make a significantly larger profit than if I was to maximize margin in the beginning. I might build a business that's able to do a $3 million profit or a $4 million profit because I built the engine. And so I'm not saying margin isn't important, but I'm saying in the beginning, I'm more interested in, do I have a great product? Are we allocating enough personnel and energy and effort towards marketing and selling the product? And am I building a great team? Because I'm looking to build a great engine. And then the engine will be significantly more profitable than if I just focused on maximizing margin from day one.
I love it. And I was super mindful of time. We're going to wrap this up, but as fast as you can, I'm curious on this. As things grow, one thing I've noticed in myself, so I got really good, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably get an entrepreneur because they into business because they like risk. They're probably good at selling, or they're good at developing, or one of these things. Then you grow it, and the next minute you're now managing shit.
Yeah.
What I've quickly noticed is I'm a great leader, horrible manager.
Yeah.
And so I'm really actually putting a lot of emphasis right now on developing myself as a better just business leader now, because I'm not as much on the front line and selling, and we've got a team growing.
Yeah.
So what would be, I guess, your best advice for people to really develop as a leader, or even some of your best books you've read? So when people are growing fast, that multiple 6, multiple 7 sort of figure revenue mark, where they're developing a team corporation, they're going to have to step up bigger than they've ever had.
Yeah.
What's been some of the biggest things that's helped you along the way?
So there's a stack of skills that help somebody become a more impactful leader. The first one is what we were talking about before, that you know better than anybody, is sales and communication. Because all we're talking about in effective communication, all we're talking about in sales is how do I communicate empathetically? Meaning, most people talk from their own perspective. Most people talk from their own agenda. All effective communication is, all sales is how do I communicate from the lens and the perspective of the person that I'm talking to? And so all effective communication sales is empathy bottled. From there, in terms of management and leadership skills, the best resources, I think, come back to some of the classics.
How to Win Friends and Influence People? That classic?
I would put that in the sales and communication layer. Stephen Covey, that was the name I was looking for.
Oh, yeah. Highly Effective Habits?
Yeah, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
So not that specifically, but he has a lot of really good leadership and management training. Man, when I was 14, I was listening back in the days of shortly after Breaking the Cycle collapse. I was listening to The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. I was listening to it on cassettes.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of great management and leadership training out there. In my latest book, Elevate, that I just released last year, it's essentially my entire blueprint for how to grow a business to 8 figures, ensuring that the business is something that you love, ensuring that it's scalable, and ensuring that margins are maximized if and when appropriate. There's a whole chapter dedicated to people, which is how do I lead them? Where are we going? How do I show up as an impactful leader? But also the management stuff. Because even if I am bringing in managers to manage different functions of my business, I need to have at least an understanding of what effective management is so that I can lead the managers and so that I can hold the managers accountable. For people that are watching this, if they follow me on Instagram, it's just Jack Delosa, Delosa. DM me the word elevate, and I will send you a free copy of that book. Chapter 8 is all about people, which is management, leadership, vision, mission, values, how to create a culture. You know, the Entourage has been listed as the 4th best place to work in Australia and the top 10 in Australasia because of everything that I've bottled in that chapter. So head to Instagram, Jack Delosa, DM me the word elevate. I'll send you a free copy of the book.
Amazing. And beautiful. So where else can people find you? So Instagram, are you anywhere else? Are you doing anything else?
Instagram's the best place.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the... It's where I'm most active.
Yep.
It's where I'm talking to people all the time in DMs. It's where I kind of document my entire journey, both from a business perspective and a family perspective, and fun and silly things on the weekends, all of that kind of stuff. And so Instagram is where I am. That's the best place to follow me.
Awesome. Final question. If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give him 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
I would say that you're following a very non-traditional path, and that is significantly harder than following the tram tracks. And that's a good thing. You'll be met with challenge, you'll be met with misunderstanding, you'll fail more times than anybody can imagine, including yourself. And all of that is okay. In fact, it's great. Because it's much better to be confronted by extreme challenge every day, every week, every month, every year, and grow into the person that you're capable of becoming to maximize your potential than it is to do what everybody else is doing. And so fuck the societal norms. Don't be contained by other people's rules or expectations. Follow your own path and be unapologetic about it.